The sound behind the door of the night was quiet, too quiet for Los Angeles. Outside, the wind moved slowly, brushing leaves along the pavement like whispers nobody wanted to hear. Sandra Bullock stood alone in her living room, her phone turned. Face down on the table, her eyes were fixed on the door as if something might suddenly appear behind it. For hours she had felt it in her chest, something was coming. She just didn't know what. She hadn't heard from Keanu in months. They used to talk every few days. Not about Hollywood or fame, but about life, about silence, about the pain they didn't always show the world. He was the one person she could be still with, but then he disappeared. Slowly at first. Fewer texts, shorter replies, then one day nothing, not a word. And now, after all that silence, came a single knock. It wasn't loud, it's not urgent, but it froze her completely. Her heart started to pound so hard it echoed in her ears. Her hand went to her chest as if to calm it. She took slow steps toward the door, unsure if she was walking toward something she had longed for or something she wasn't ready to face. She reached for the handle, but her hand was trembling. She whispered, "Keanu." No answer. She opened the door anyway. There he stood. His hair was longer, a bit messy. His face was calm, but his eyes, those eyes were tired. Deeper than before, heavier, like he'd been carrying something too big for too long. Sandra felt her throat tighten. She hadn't seen him in person since that night on set, the night everything had changed. She didn't speak, neither did he. For a moment, they just stood there in silence. She wanted to ask why he had come, but the way he looked at her told her not to rush it. Instead, he gently lifted his hand and showed her something. A small, folded piece of paper. He held it out to her, eyes never leaving hers. She took it with careful fingers, opened it slowly. It was a drawing, a simple pencil sketch. It was of her sitting on a bench, head in her hands. And beside her, a man. Him, no faces, just two figures under a tree. But the way it was drawn, you could feel the sadness and the comfort. It wasn't a beautiful drawing, it was honest. She looked up at him, confused but moved. He finally spoke. Softly, I didn't know where else to go. Her voice cracked when she replied, "You could have come sooner." He nodded, eyes dropping to the floor. I was afraid if I came too soon, I'd fall apart. Sandra stepped aside, slowly. Then come in. You can fall apart here. He hesitated for just a second before stepping inside. She closed the door behind him. They didn't hug. They didn't smile. But in that quiet moment, something unspoken passed between them. Something stronger than words. Keanu walked to the couch and sat down slowly, his hands clasped tightly. Sandra joined him, leaving space between them, not distance, just room to breathe. You want to talk? She asked. He shook his head. No, just sit with me. So she did. Minutes passed. Maybe hours. Neither of them checked. Outside, the city carried on. But inside, a kind of peace began to settle. Not perfect, not easy, but real. When Sandra finally broke the silence, her voice was soft. What happened to you? Keanu didn't answer right away. He rubbed his hands together, stared at them, then leaned back. After my last project, I started feeling empty. I'd wake up and not recognize myself. It's not in the mirror, not in my choices, not in the silence. She listened without interrupting. I tried to fake it. Smile for cameras, talk to people. But it was like my heart wasn't in it anymore. And I kept thinking about you. She blinked, unsure how to respond. I remembered the way you listened. The way you always asked if I was okay even when the whole world thought I was fine. And then one night I sat down and drew that sketch. I didn't know why. Just felt like I had to. And when I finished it, I knew. I had to come see you. Her eyes were glossy now. Not from sadness, but from something deeper. Recognition. You saved me once, she whispered. He turned to her, surprised, when, years ago, when no one knew what I was going through, showed up at my trailer with coffee, and just sat there. Said nothing. But you stayed. That's when I realized I wasn't invisible. Keanu lowered his head, his voice breaking a little. You've never been invisible. Silence again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It felt like rest. The clock ticked quietly in the background. Sandra leaned back, her shoulder brushing his slightly. They didn't move apart. Finally, she asked, "Do you want to stay here tonight?" He didn't hesitate. Yes. What? She got up and brought him a blanket and a pillow. He smiled faintly when he saw them. You always knew how to make people feel safe. Just treat people the way I wish someone treated me when I needed it most. Keanu looked at her, really looked. Then tonight, ... You're saving me again. She gave a small nod, eyes warm but tired. And maybe tomorrow, you'll save me too. As she walked toward her room, she paused and turned around. Keanu ... I'm glad you knocked. He looked at her, his voice quiet. I almost didn't. But you did, she said, and then she left him there, safe under the same roof, in a silence that no longer hurt. The morning after's sun rose slowly, casting soft golden light across the hardwood floor. Birds chirped outside, gently waking the world. Inside the house, everything was still. Sandra lay in bed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. She hadn't really slept. Her body had rested, but her mind had been floating between memories and questions all night. She turned toward the window. The silence wasn't heavy anymore, but it still made her uneasy. Keanu was in the next room, probably still. Asleep on the couch, her heart felt calm and restless at the same time. It was strange how quickly he had returned and how natural it felt to have him close again. She got up quietly and wrapped a soft gray sweater around her shoulders. Barefoot, she walked into the living room. The moment she stepped in, her eyes softened. Keanu was awake. He was sitting on the couch, the same blanket folded beside him, and in his hand was a small cup of coffee. He looked up when he saw her and gave a tired but honest smile. I didn't want to wake you, he said softly. You didn't, she replied. I wasn't really sleeping. She walked to the kitchen and made herself a cup. Neither of them spoke for a moment. The silence felt full, like it held stories waiting to be told. Finally, Sandra asked, How long were you out there before you knocked? Keanu's eyes dropped to his cup. About an hour. Why? I was scared you wouldn't open the door. She nodded slowly. And if I hadn't, I think I would have sat outside until the sun came up. Small laugh escaped her. Not because it was funny, but because it was true. She could imagine him doing that. Sitting on the steps all night just to be near something familiar, you know? She said, leaning on the counter. Last night reminded me of when we first met. His eyes lifted. You mean the audition? Yeah, I was nervous. You were. Quiet. Too quiet. I thought you didn't like me. He chuckled. I was just scared I'd say something dumb. She smiled. You didn't. You said the kindest thing anyone could have said. Keanu looked puzzled. What did I say? You said, I hope you're okay today. That was it, eh? But no one else had said anything like that in days. Not even my family. His face softened. I meant it. I know. They sat in that memory for a moment, both sipping slowly, remembering who they had been back then. Younger, more hopeful, but also more guarded. Then Sandra asked the question she had been holding back since last night. What happened between us? Keanu, why did you stop calling? His hands gripped the cup a little tighter. He looked toward the window, the sunlight, catching the side of his face. After the accident, he began slowly. I started questioning everything. She felt her stomach turn. She knew what accident he meant. The one that took someone dear to him. The one no one talked about anymore. Wasn't angry, he continued. I was just ... empty. I didn't know how to show up for people, not even the ones I cared about. I thought maybe disappearing would hurt less than pretending I was okay. Sandra sat down across from him, her eyes holding his. You don't have to pretend with me? You never did, he looked up. I know that now. But back then, I didn't believe anyone could really understand what I was feeling, not even you. She reached out and gently touched his hand. You don't need to explain it all. I need you to know when you went silent. It hurt. Didn't know if I had done something wrong. I blamed myself. His face broke with guilt. You didn't. It was all me. She nodded. Then let's not stay stuck in the past. If you're here now, Let's be here. Keanu's eyes filled with something she hadn't seen in a long time. Relief. Thank you, he whispered. Don't thank me yet, she said, half joking. You still have to help me fix the broken window in the guest room, he laughed. And it was a sound that filled the house like sunlight. Warm, human. Healing after breakfast. They sat on the porch. The morning air was cool and gentle. Neighbors walked by, some waving. No one seemed to notice the quiet miracle happening on that porch to friends, once lost to time and pain, slowly finding their way back. Do you ever think about quitting? Keanu asked suddenly. Acting, yeah? The whole thing? The lights? The noise? She thought for a moment. Sometimes. But then I meet someone who tells me one of my movies got them through a hard time. And suddenly, it feels like it's worth it. He nodded. I've been wondering if I still have that kind of impact. She turned to him. You do, Keanu. Even when you're silent. Even when you're lost. Just being you. ... It matters. Looked down, trying to hide the emotion behind his eyes. Do you think I can get better? She didn't hesitate. Yes, and you don't have to do it alone. Keanu took a long breath. I don't deserve your kindness. Maybe not. But that's the point of kindness. It's not about who deserves it. It's about who needs it. ... Wind picked up gently, brushing her hair back. He watched her for a moment, and in his eyes there was a shift. Something opening, something soft. Can I stay for a few days? He asked, almost like a child afraid of rejection. She smiled. You can stay as long as you need. He looked out at the trees, his voice almost a whisper. I don't know what tomorrow holds, but I know this feels like the first safe moment I've had in months. Then let's just stay in this moment. She replied, for as long as it lasts. They didn't talk much for the rest of the day. They cleaned a little, cooked a simple dinner, watched the sun disappear behind the trees. And as night came again, they sat on the porch with blankets over their laps, sharing quiet stories and little memories. They didn't talk about Hollywood. They didn't talk about fame. They talked about childhood, about loss, about the little things that stayed with them. And for the first time in a long time, Keanu slept through the night. No nightmares. No waking up gasping. Just peace. Because sometimes healing doesn't come from answers. It comes from being seen. It's from being heard. It's from someone opening the door when you knock, even if you're late. Even if you're broken. And Sandra had opened that door, shaking and unsure, but full of love. Shadows from the past. Next morning, the world felt quieter than usual. Soft clouds floated over the sky like heavy thoughts that hadn't yet fallen. Inside the house, everything seemed peaceful. Sandra was in the kitchen, humming gently as she made scrambled eggs. The smell of butter and toast drifted through the air like comfort. It felt like a normal morning dash almost. Keanu walked in, hair slightly messy, a quiet smile on his face. That smells like memories, he said. It should, Sandra replied, handing him a plate. You ate this exact breakfast the morning. After our first shoot together, he paused. You remember that? Of course you were nervous. You spilled orange juice on your script and tried to blame the wind. He chuckled, shaking his head. I've always been a mess around you. No, she said, sitting beside him. You've always been real. They ate together in calm silence, both feeling a kind of comfort that had become rare in their lives. But under that calm, something else was growing. A question. A presence. Something neither of them wanted to say out loud yet. Sandra leaned back and looked at him carefully. Double quotes. Keanu. There's something I should tell you. He looked up, immediately alert. What is it? Yesterday, before you showed up, was packing. I was going to leave the city for a while, maybe a few months. A face shifted, unsure whether to be surprised or hurt. Why? I needed space. The pressure here, it's been growing. People expect me to be something I'm not anymore. I just wanted quiet and peace. He nodded slowly. Did my showing up change your plan? I don't know yet, she answered honestly. But it made me feel like maybe running isn't always the answer. They didn't get to speak further because that's when the doorbell rang. Keanu looked at her, puzzled, expecting someone. She shook her head. No, she walked to the door cautiously and opened it. Her body stiffened. It was Matthew. He stood there, confident and polished. With a single eyebrow raised, "You weren't answering my calls," said. Keanu stood behind her now, silent but alert. "Matthew, this isn't a good time," Sandra said firmly. He glanced at Keanu, eyes narrowing. I can see that. Keanu didn't move. His face stayed calm, but his jaw tightened. Matthew stepped forward slightly. "I came to talk," it's explained. "There's nothing left to explain," Sandra said, trying to shut the door. But Matthew placed his hand gently on the frame. "Please, 5 minutes." She looked back at Keanu, who gave her a small nod. "I'll be in the other room," he said quietly. Once he left, Matthew stepped in. His energy filled the space too quickly. It was like a storm had walked into a quiet room. "You didn't tell me you were still in contact with him?" Matthew said. "I wasn't," Sandra replied. "Until yesterday. Walked around looking at the familiar room. You told me you needed space, that you were overwhelmed. I gave you that, and now he's here." She sighed. "Keanu is not the reason I needed space, and you know that." Matthew's face twitched. "You think he understands you better than I do?" "He listens," she said simply. That hit him harder than she expected. He paused and softened his tone. "I know I messed things up," he said. "I was too focused on the image, the career. I stopped seeing you." Her voice was calm but firm. "And I stopped waiting to be seen." He looked away. Are you two back together?" "We were never together like that," she replied. "But what we have, it's real, and right now, I need that." I looked at her eyes, searching for something he couldn't find. "I didn't come here to fight," he said finally. "Came because I wanted to say I'm sorry." "Thank you," she whispered. Then he turned and left quietly. The door closed behind him, and the room sighed with relief. Keanu stepped back into the room. "You okay?" he asked. "I will be," she said. They sat down again, the weight of the visit hanging in the air. "Who was he?" Keanu asked gently. "Someone I thought understood me, but he saw the surface. Not what was underneath." Keanu nodded slowly. "I know that feeling." Sandra looked at him, eyes tired. "It's hard, isn't it? Being loved for what we show, but not for what we are." "It is," he said, "but not impossible." She leaned her head back on the couch, staring at the ceiling. "You know what scares me the most?" she whispered. "That I'll open myself up again and lose everything." "Then don't open yourself all at once," he said. "Just open the door one more time and see what stays." They both sat there, the moment stretching softly outside. The clouds finally opened, and a light rain began to fall. They opened the windows and let the cool air in, and for a while, the sound of the rain filled the silence between them. They talked late into the night, again about everything. About fears. About old regrets. About dreams they had let go of. And somewhere in between the tears and the laughter, something unbreakable began to grow. It wasn't romance. It wasn't friendship. It was something deeper. Something built from scars and silence and shared survival. The next morning, Sandra found a note on the kitchen table. It was from Keanu. "I'm going to the cemetery. I need to say goodbye. I'll be back by sunset." She held the paper to her chest. He was healing, and she was beginning to believe she could heal too. Goodbye, softly spoken. Sky above the cemetery was gray, soft and still. The air carried a chill that whispered against the skin, like the past gently brushing the present. Keanu walked alone between the rows of stone, each name a memory frozen. In time, he carried no flowers, only silence. His boots moved slowly through the damp grass, each step careful, like he was afraid to disturb the quiet. His coat was buttoned all the way up, hands in his pockets, heart somewhere far away. He finally stopped at a small gravestone, one most people would walk right past without noticing. There was nothing fancy about it. No gold lettering. No long message. Just a name, 2 dates, and a carved rose near the bottom. He stood there for a long time, staring at the stone. "I'm sorry," he said softly. His voice barely rose above the wind, but somehow it still felt like a scream. "I should have come sooner." I should have come when it happened, but I didn't know how. His eyes began to shine with tears. He didn't wipe them away. I've spent years trying to carry this alone, trying to be strong. Trying to smile for the cameras, for the fans, for the world, but inside, I was broken. He sat down slowly on the grass, legs crossed like a child. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a photograph. It was old and folded, corners worn. In the picture were two young faces, and hers, both smiling like they had no idea what pain even looked like. You told me once, he whispered, that I hide behind silence. And you were right. He placed the photo against the stone gently. But I met someone who saw through it. Opened her door when I knocked. Who sat with me in my quiet and never asked for more than honesty. His breath caught. You'd like her. A soft breeze passed through the trees. Birds scattered in the distance. And then he heard footsteps at. First, he didn't look up. He thought it might be a caretaker. But the steps slowed, then stopped near him. He lifted his head and turned and froze. It was his sister Mia. They hadn't seen each other in nearly 4 years. She looked older, thinner, but her eyes were the same soft, guarded and full of stories. You're really here, she said. Quietly, he stood up slowly, unsure whether to speak or stay silent. Mia looked down at the gravestone and then back at him. I come here every week, she said. I talk to her about life. About you. He swallowed hard. Why didn't you? Call I did, she said gently. But you stopped picking up. And I stopped trying. His head dropped. I'm sorry. She reached out and touched his arm lightly. Me too. They stood together in front of the grave. Two people, bound by loss and time, finally sharing the same space after years of distance. She loved you, Mia said. Even when you were lost. Especially then. Keanu nodded. I never stopped loving her either. And stop punishing yourself, Mia said. It won't bring her back. But it's been keeping you gone too. He looked at her and for the first time in years truly saw her not as someone from his past, but as someone still holding on, still waiting. Can we start over? He asked, voice trembling. We don't have to, she replied. We can just continue. They smiled, and something heavy lifted between them as they walked back toward the entrance of the cemetery. Keanu looked over at his sister. Staying at Sandra's for a while, he said. Mia raised an eyebrow. Bullock, he laughed softly. Yeah. You always had a thing for powerful women. It's not like that, he said. Not right now. She just ... gets me. Mia nodded. That's rare. Don't lose it. When they reached the gate, they hugged. It's not a long one, not dramatic. Just two siblings rediscovering connection? Call me this time, Mia said. I will, he promised. And then he walked away, feeling lighter. When he returned to Sandra's house, the sun was just beginning to set. Golden light spilled through the windows, and the smell of soup filled the air. Sandra was sitting on the porch, blanket wrapped around her legs, a book in her lap. She looked up and saw him and immediately knew something had changed. He walked toward her slowly, eyes softer, posture more open. How was it? She asked gently. Hard, he said, but good. She moved over, making room for him on the bench. He sat beside her, and for a moment, he just watched the sky change colors. I saw Mia, he said. Sandra single, quotes, eyes widened. You did? Yeah, she came to the cemetery. We talked for the first time in years. Sandra placed a hand over Swazizina. His. How do you feel? Like I just took my first deep breath in a long time. They sat there as the last bit of sun dipped below the horizon. Keanu turned to her. Thank you, he said, for giving me space. In a place to be broken. Shh. Smiled softly. You're not broken. You're just healing. He looked out at the street, the lights starting to blink on, one by one. Do you ever wonder if we'll ever really be okay? He asked. She leaned her head on his shoulder. Not every day, she said. But some days, ... I believe it. And in that moment, they both decided to believe it too. Not forever. Not perfectly, but just for tonight. Kindness in the rain next morning arrived with a soft drizzle. Rain tapped gently on the windows like a shy reminder that nothing in life stays still forever. Keanu and Sandra sat at the kitchen table, both with mugs of warm tea. The silence between them was different now, not heavy, not empty. It's just calm. Like two people who didn't need to fill every space with words. Sandra looked out the window and smiled. You ever think about how quiet can be beautiful? Keanu nodded slowly. When you're not afraid of it? Yes. They both chuckled. For the first time in a long time, they weren't just surviving. They were present. After breakfast, they decided to take a walk. They didn't care about the rain. They put on light jackets and stepped outside into the soft mist. The streets were quiet. Few people were out. Their steps matched each other, slow and steady, like they were walking through a painting. As they turned the corner near a small grocery store, they saw him, a boy, maybe 10 or 11, sitting alone on the bench under the awning. His clothes were soaked. His shoes looked too big. He was holding a plastic bag tightly to his chest. Sandra stopped. Keanu saw her eyes, and without a word, they both walked over to the boy. Keanu crouched beside him. Hey, buddy. You okay? The boy looked up, startled. His eyes were wide and red, like he'd been crying, but he didn't speak. Sandra knelt beside him, too. Where's your family? The boy shook his head. Gone, he whispered. Cancer's voice was soft. Gone where? They left me. Said they'd come back. That was yesterday. Sandra's heart cracked. She looked at the bag he held. It had a few snacks. Nothing else? Are you hungry? She asked gently. He nodded. Keanu stood. Come with us. We'll get you something warm to eat. The boy hesitated, then stood slowly. His trust was fragile, but their kindness felt real. They walked back to Sandra's house, the boy between them. He barely spoke, but every step closer to the warmth of a home seemed to ease his tension inside. Sandra brought out dry clothes. Keanu made hot soup. The boy sat quietly, eating slowly but with purpose, as if he didn't know when his next meal would be. After a while, he finally spoke. My name's Isaiah. Keanu smiled. That's a strong name. You're Keanu Reeves, the boy said, eyes widening. And you're Sandra Bullock, he laughed. We used to be, Sandra said playfully. Today we're just two people trying to help. Isaiah's eyes lowered. Why? Keanu leaned forward. Because someone helped us when we were hurting. And we never forgot how that felt. Sandra sat beside the boy. What about school? She asked. Isaiah looked away. I stopped going. We moved too much. Then my mom. She started disappearing. For days, and yesterday she told me to wait on the bench. But she never came back. Silence filled the room. Sandra single quotes, his hand reached for his. You don't have to wait anymore. They made some calls, contacted a local shelter that worked with children in crisis. It was safe, kind, not cold or crowded. Isaiah could stay there while they helped figure out what came next. When the woman from the shelter arrived, Isaiah clung to Sandra tightly. Will I see you again? He asked. Double quotes. Yes, she promised. You have my number. We'll visit. Often, Keanu bent down and handed him a small wooden coin from his pocket. My grandfather gave me this when I was scared once. Said it brings courage. Now, I want you to have it. Isaiah clutched the coin like it was gold. As he left, Keanu and Sandra stood at the doorway, watching the car disappear into the light rain. They didn't speak for a long time, but something in them had shifted. We didn't have to do that, Sandra said softly. No, Keanu replied. But we needed to. They walked back inside, both thinking about the boy. About how life was full of invisible people, waiting on benches in the rain. And how easy it was to walk past. Do you think we made a difference? She asked. I think, Keanu said slowly, we reminded him that he mattered. Sandra looked at him. You've done that for a lot of people, you know. He smiled sadly. I just wish someone had done it for me earlier. She touched his hand. Maybe we become what we never had. They sat in silence again, firelight flickering nearby. Then came another knock at the door. It wasn't loud. Soft. Patient. Sandra stood, surprised. Now, who could that be? She opened the door and gasped. It was her brother. They hadn't spoken in years. Not since the falling out. Not since the argument that had torn their family in two. He looked older, more tired. But in his eyes, there was something that hadn't been there before regret. "Sandra," he said quietly, "I heard about what happened with Isaiah. Someone told me, and I realized ... I miss you." She stared at him, stunned. Too many feelings rushed in at once. Keanu appeared behind her, sensing the tension. "You okay?" he asked. Sandra nodded slowly. Then she stepped outside, pulling the door gently behind her. The rain had stopped, but her heart was pouring. Full circle Sandra stood outside, face to face with her brother, Thomas. Rain dripped slowly from the edge of the porch, but she barely felt it. Her chest rose and fell in deep, uneven breaths. She hadn't seen him in almost 5 years. The last time they spoke, words had been thrown like knives. Neither one had backed down, and neither one had called since. But now here he was, older, softer, haunted, double quotes. "I didn't know if I'd ever see you again," Thomas said quietly. Sandra's arms crossed without thinking. Part of her wanted to run back inside. The other part was frozen in place. "Why now?" she asked. Double quotes, "because something in me broke," he said. "When Mom passed, I buried everything. Pain, guilt, pride. I told myself you didn't care, that I didn't care. But then I saw that video online." She blinked. "What video? You and Keanu walking with that little boy? Someone filmed it. It's just a few seconds. You gave the kid your scarf?" He smiled. It went everywhere. "Thousands of people talking about how kind you were." Sandra looked down, and I realized," Thomas continued, "you were still the same. Even after everything. Still giving. Still seeing people when no one else did." His voice cracked, and I wasn't. I became bitter, angry. I let our last fight grow into something much bigger than it ever needed to be. Sandra stared at him. "You said things I'll never forget," she whispered. "I know," he said, "and I don't deserve forgiveness. But I came here because I want to. Try." A long silence followed. Behind her, through the window, Keanu watched from inside. He didn't move. He knew this was Sandra's moment. She took a slow breath. "You hurt me, Thomas," she said. "But I hurt you too. We were both in pain. Neither of us knew how to talk about it." He nodded. She stepped closer. "So let's talk now. Not about the past, about what's still possible." His eyes filled. "I'd like that." They hugged awkwardly at first, stiff, uncertain. But then Sandra closed her eyes and leaned in, and Thomas held on like a man who didn't know how to say thank you with words. When they stepped inside, Keanu gave a gentle nod. "Everything okay?" he asked. Sandra smiled. "It will be." For the next hour, they sat in the living room sipping tea, sharing quiet laughter, letting the years melt away little by little. Thomas told stories about their childhood that Sandra had long forgotten. Keanu listened, smiled, even added a few gentle jokes that helped break the ice. And then Thomas stood. "I won't stay long," he said. "I just wanted to start something new and let you know I'm here, ... if you want that." Sandra walked him to the door. "I do," she said. They hugged again, this time stronger. After he left, Sandra leaned her forehead against the door for a moment, taking in everything. Keanu walked over. "You okay?" She turned to him. "I think I've been holding my breath for years, and today, ... I finally let it go." They sat back down on the couch. The rain had stopped. Sunlight broke through the clouds and spread gently through the windows. Keanu looked at her carefully. "You know," he said slowly, "I was planning to leave tomorrow." Her heart sank. "Oh, but ... I changed my mind." She looked at him, eyebrows raised. "Why?" "Because," he said, "for the first time in years, I feel like I'm part of something again. Not Hollywood, not a set, not a scene, just ... This real life. The kind that heals you slowly." She smiled. "You can stay as long as you want." He laughed. Careful. I might never leave. They both leaned back, heads resting against the couch. The kind of silence returned the healing. Kind. The kind that comes after wounds have been spoken aloud after a moment. Sandra spoke again. You know when you knocked on my door? ... I thought I was dreaming. Me too, he whispered. But maybe, she continued, some dreams are just waiting for us to wake up and choose them. He turned to her. I never thanked you, he said. For what? For seeing me, for opening the door, for not needing me to be anyone but who I really am. Hey. Her voice lowered. Maybe you've done the same for me, without either of us realizing it. A bird landed on the window ledge just then, chirping once before flying away. The world felt still, but not stuck. Sandra turned to him one last time that evening. So what now? Keanu smiled gently. Now we live. They sat on the porch again. As the sun began to set, just like they had that first night, as the colors melted across the sky, they held hands, not romantically, not as a promise, but as two souls who had survived the noise and found peace in each other's quiet. And somewhere in that quiet, they began again. Not as stars, not as broken people, but as friends, real ones. The kind who answer the door,